a lot of startup founders are, when I'm talking about startup, I'm talking about 1-2% startup founders. They are reaching out to me saying, hey, you know what, I have a tool, let's can we collaborate? So I said, why not? So Toronto AI basically, it is a bridge between startups and developers. So if you are a startup, you are welcome here to showcase your product, get a feedback, always constructive criticism. I like it because without constructive criticism, your product will not improve. Second is developers. Developers, you want to collaborate, you want to learn from each other, and find a very collaborative environment. So as a part of, as I said, so I launched this DevOps Launchpad program a couple of years ago, which was basically designed for people, usually early career people, like if you're a, or people who are switching career from something other job to this job. Say if someone wants to become a DevOps, a Launchpad program, which is basically a very intensive 60-day program, which includes 4 to 5 weeks of live training, and then remaining 4 weeks you do project and the placement. So yeah, so basically recently finished our recent batch. In that we started cohort of 7 to 8 people. On that, 2 to 3 people got hired, they got a full-time employment, and rest people we are still working on that. So DevOps Launchpad program is pretty simple. It is for business, or it could any startup or anybody. The challenge is that finding a good skilled DevOps engineer is still a big
Process
challenge.
పోయిద్దిగా బ్లాక్ అని
And
వచ్చింది ఇప్పుడు.
I
అది
think we have to mute
వచ్చింది
Sanya.
సౌండ్
Saranya, can you mute yourself? And the solution is that the intensive program where the graduate can, they become employable when they join the program. They should be able to commit for at least 5 weeks of training. And the goal is that when they join the company, they are day one ready. And not only that, we also provide 3 months of mentorship during that program when they are actually join the company, so that the transition is smooth and they are successful in their career. And of course, for employers, it's pretty good. They get a pre-vetted candidate without going through the hoops of recruitment. And uh, and they are getting a fully mentorship, so that a new joinee, when they join, they are not putting additional load on your existing teams. And of course, for job seeker, it is very good. You can get a paid internship opportunity also. So in this program, when you getting training, you are getting trained and also getting paid on certain condition, provided you are a fresh graduate from this year from university in Canada or US. Then you get a paid opportunity. For if you are switching the career, then there is a free for you. For more information, you can go to this page. I'll send you this slide. Don't worry about that. Second, what is mostly focused towards the developer for the startup ecosystem. Example, you are a startup and you developed a tool. Assume you created a model, some model you launch on Hugging Face, and you want more developer adoption. How will you do that? Either you pay the ads on Google, or you go a ground up approach. In that, what we do is that we collaborate with our community developers to actually do build a small prototype for your tool into GitHub and everywhere, so that it gives a good developer relationship. Like a startup has a tool and people are using it and they are giving you feedback. So this is really good. So example, the challenge for startup is that you have a tool, you want a developer feedback or adoption. That is a challenge. For developer, how it works is, say if you're a developer, you are not getting a real world experience. What will you do? So if you're not getting a real world experience, that is the best thing. You collaborate with the startup company. They will give you a tool, whatever it is, and you are able to build your real world experience. And at the same time, you are building your resume or profile in GitHub itself. So while you are doing commits for the code, it is helping the startup founder that his or her product is being used in the market. At the same time, developer is committing the code, which is actually boosting their profile. So it works out really well for both of the side. So if anybody in the community, if you are a startup founder, tech startup founder looking for something, DM me. We are more than happy to collaborate. And I think that's it from my side. This is it. So now I'll hand it over to our guest speaker, Anshuman. So Anshuman, as he mentioned, he is a 2 decade experience as a full-blown Java developer, and he did his PhD from Carleton University, and he's a computer science guru. Again, I don't claim myself that I am a computer science guru or anything. Mostly I work as a solution architect, as I mentioned. about a decade ago, switched my career to more of an infrastructure focus. And so here to Anshuman on the vibe coding. And by the way, if anybody has any question, uh, I would say rather than interrupting, just leave your in the chat. I will accumulate and I will give you when he's in a pause, we will ask the question.
Right. Thanks a lot, Chandan, for this invite and giving me this opportunity to talk. Can everyone see the screen? Is it
Yeah,
visible, Sean? Okay.
yeah,
You
yeah,
guys you guys can see. Okay, cool. So yeah, let's talk. As you can see, and you probably know from the topic, it is vibe coding. I'm gonna try to break some um I guess misnomers about vibe coding. It's got a bad reputation in the industry, and I want to at least do my part to clean it up a little bit because I think some of it is unwarranted. The bad attention it's getting. Um, I myself, I've been vibe coding for since the time essentially uh, like Copilot was released, like in 2021. I've been a paid subscriber and have kind of seen the evolution of the tools. So I'll give you some of my input. I was working in different companies, so I was essentially at the time when this happened, I was at IBM because my earlier startup had got acquired by IBM. And IBM, we were doing some of this LLM agentic AI coding, but it wasn't at that scale. And I mean, the only way I figured out to do it is essentially join another startup, which is where I am. So I'm at a startup called Elastio. We do ransomware recoveries and ransomware prevention. It's very interesting. But I'm the VP of engineering there. I lead the engineering teams, and we kind of use a lot of AI driven code. So I'm gonna just share my experience and what I've learned so far. Hopefully, it'll be useful for you guys. Okay, so just moving on. So what we'll cover, pretty much a simple agenda. I'm going to show you how to pair program with AI. Just treat it as your co-pilot, and I'll show you the tips and tricks there. The two IDs, well, the ID that I'm going to prefer is going to be Cursor, and I'm going to talk more about it later. And then I'll also show you Claude Code. I will touch on other kind of I guess LLM driven AI coding tools like Codex for sure. I can kind of show Kiro. I can show Visual Studio Code with GitHub Copilot. But essentially, my tools of preference for the last year, or well, since when Claude Code came out and Cursor before that, have been these two. Codex is better in some ways, so I'll just share my experience when I think it's better. But that's about it. And then the second part is I'm gonna actually, and this is gonna be, I know it's like one and two, but the two actually comes first. I'm gonna teach you a little bit about production engineering and how to think a little differently when you are uh, making software with AI. It's not a shortcut, and I'll keep repeating it, but it does give you a nice boost, and you just have to recognize the details and what's happening. And I'm sure a lot of you know it. I'll cover some basics there, but it's just my thinking and how I develop when I'm using AI assisted tools. The most important ones of that is tests. I think without tests, I mean, even before AI, like my whole thing was TDD and writing tests before. But with AI, it's become like paramount. Without these tests, like your application will fail, like guaranteed, if you do not have tests. So just get in the habit of writing good tests, and of course, bake in observability, security, operations, all the good stuff. So we'll cover that a little bit. Again, it's a 1 hour talk, so I don't know how much I can cover, but I'll try my best. Okay, so before we kind of get into the meat, I just want to talk about agentic AI, like all these terms you hear, right? Like, what is it, and how is it reshaping software development?
Can you please mute?
Right. So, essentially, the main point here that I wanted to make is that we have to figure out um, a way or a path to use AI with software engineering. This is not a cheat code. This is not something that, and I know like Chandan, you were sharing your experience before that it's frustrating. I think it's always going to be frustrating, but because like I mean, code will make mistakes. Maybe we'll get to a point where AI does everything, but essentially, it's a problem of translating what you want to what the AI understands. So that's always going to be there. But ultimately, this is not a way to just circumvent all parts of software engineering. You still have to be a good software engineer. You still have to think how to make scalable, performant software products. But what agentic AI lets you do is just move faster, right? And that's the whole thing. It's the concept is to use natural language to share your intent, and then that, along with all the good practices, allow you to make the software product. So again, let's go to vibe coding now, right? So what is it? Um, it's essentially a shift, right? From basically writing code line by line, which a lot of people do till today. It's not a bad thing. It's just a way to um, kind of have it's an AI assisted coding, right? So you ask AI for some help. Vibe is pretty much, I don't know. Again, it's a bad term here, and the term was invented by this guy Andre Karpathy, Canadian guy, who essentially. Well, he was one of the co-founders of OpenAI, and then was a director of AI at Tesla. Did a lot of vision stuff. So he's a very famous, popular guy. But he essentially coined this term as a means to say like fully given to the vibes. They just forget the code even exists. Just think about the idea. And I think that is the super powerful idea we have to remember, that it's not about the code. It's about what software you're developing and you're delivering to your customers. Like that's the bottom line, right? And to do that, if you can kind of get one with this product and forget the code exists, and just think about the product. That's it. That's what I think the intent is to me. I think that's what Karpathy was trying to promote. And essentially, that's what vibe coding is from my perspective, right? So the developers focus on the what, which is the vision, the UX, the outcomes. They don't care about what the technology is. The agent or the AI agent is the one that handles the how, the boilerplate, the glue. Um, and it's a little simplistic here. Of course, the developer has to care about security, has to care about other things. But in general, the vision is the most important thing. And then the role evolves, right? So the developer becomes the manager, the director, the prompter, and more. And ultimately, the most important part is becomes the rigorous validator or the QA specialist, right? Because my role, I feel, has been kind of devolved into like a QA role now, which is very interesting. Okay. So, I mean, it's all English, right? Copilot, like I said, came out 2021. ChatGPT came out soon after. 2023, there was an interesting article, which is why I put it in there. There was an article that says English is the hottest new programming language. And the reason I put it in this slide is because it reminds me of Lisp or Prolog, if anyone remembers these old archaic languages. I think Lisp was invented in MIT in 1958. So even before any probably language that you guys ever use today. Um, and then there was Prolog, which is like a very logical, although a Turing complete language. So it's very they were kind of attempts at abstraction, right? To make sure you can write programming languages at a higher level with English-like sentences, right? Python is another one that probably tried to do that with its syntax, right? And now we've gone full circle. Now we're back to the point where we're just writing English, and that converts it into code. It's obviously not as simple as that, but I think that's where we're getting. So 2023, I found this article, which is why I put it in there, and then 2025, of course, Karpathy Khan's vibe coding, and we're going. And if you think about it, February of 2025 was like 8 months ago, right? So it's things are moving quick here. Okay, I want to get into a little bit of the nitty gritties because you need to understand that to actually do some AI coding, right? And don't worry, we'll get into a good demo. We'll get into some hands-on. I'll show you how the cursor works. I'll show you everything, but just I want to build the context here. Pun not intended. Okay, so what is a token, right? And how do LLMs work, right? So what happens is an LLM, a large language model, gets input tokens, right? And then it predicts the next most likely token. That's exactly what it's doing. You can think of an LLM as a autocomplete on steroids. I don't know. I read that somewhere, and a lot of people have repeated that. That's what I think of it as. It's autocomplete on steroids, right? And it's probabilistic, right? It's very powerful. It works. You see the amount of power it's generating right now with the responses, but it's still probabilistic. And because it's probabilistic, hallucinations happen, right? So it's very interesting. Now, let's go a little deeper into what tokens are. So a token is essentially how LLMs process information, right? And a token is roughly three-fourths of a word. If you think on average an English word is about 6 characters, then a token is about 4 characters on average. Um, And then what happens is you also have to understand what a context window is. So every LLM has a context window, which is essentially its memory, right? So imagine you're talking to LLM, and I'm sure all of you know this, but let's say you start a new session, you start chatting with the LLM, anything you're talking with it is going into its context window. This is different from LLM memory. I know OpenAI has done some stuff where it remembers your previous conversations, but that's different. I'm talking about in the current conversation that or the session that you have, the the the, the communication that's happening between you and the LLM, that is all in that context window. Now, Claude 3.5 had a token window, and again, it's old. We've got Claude 4.5 now. But just as an example, Claude 3.5 had a context window of 200K tokens, or 200,000 tokens, right? Which is roughly about 500 pages of text. Um, why this is important is every time you use a model, you need to know what its context window is. And you have to account for the fact that 30 to 40% of that context window is going to be eaten up by code structure, formatting, boilerplate stuff, right? So it's very important to know these things when you're doing vibe coding, because otherwise you're going to be in trouble. Like you're going to burn through your tokens, you're going to pay a lot of money, you won't know how to use what, you have to know which. So all like these are the two basic things, the token and the context window, and then now you have to understand which model does what better and what their token sorry, what their context windows are, basically. um, the other thing you have to think about for with tokens is the prompt itself, right? And there's something called a bad prompt and something called a good prompt, right? So you all of you again intuitively or practically know this. For example, if you ask ChatGPT, what's 17 into 28, it's going to give you an answer, right? But if you say what's 17 into 28 and say take step by step and show each step, right? And then it's going to actually explain how it does it. It's always better. So if you want to learn, and that's coming back to one of Chandan's point where he mentioned, hey, if we just rely on LLMs too much, is that going to rot my thinking? Well, I think you can amend your prompts in a way that help you learn, right? And I think that's very important. Like you have to be very conscious about your prompting. But again, remember when you do this, you're sending more tokens in. That's why it's very critical to think critically, to be able to summarize and concisely ask AI the question so that you can conserve your tokens and get the best bang for your buck, right? That's the most critical part here. It's true for kind of normal LLM interactions that we do every day with ChatGPT and Gemini and whatnot, but also it's important in vibe coding. It's the same concept, it's the same LLM, right? Okay. And this is more of a kind of, again, going back to what was there before to what is there now. So we started with kind of low agency where tab completions, right? Those were also assistants. If you remember IDs back in the day, maybe even 30 years ago, I don't know when IntelliJ was kind of formed, but I know Eclipse was there before, right? Because I've been using Eclipse for at least over 20 years, right? So you press tab, it's giving you a response that is some sort of AI assisted, well, not AI, but it's an assistance, right? And then later on, tab completion with AI came in, right, with Copilot. And then you got like the in ID chatbots that happened in 2021, 2022, and they're good. Like you can ask it a question. Let's say you have a big code base, you ask a question saying, hey, why is this kind of I don't know, error happening? And it looks at the code and says, oh, because maybe you haven't initialized this variable or something, right? And then next we come to agents where you give it a large enough prompt and the agent kind of gives you the answer back. What an agent actually is think of it as a code or a piece of software that has this while true thing where it's like, while this thing is true or while my objectives have not been met, let's keep going, right? And it'll do whatever it can in its power uh, to get the answer to you, right? If it needs to create directories, if it needs to SSH in, if it needs to, I don't know, create entries into the production database, hopefully not, but hopefully it'll ask you before you give it all these permissions. But an agent is some sort of a software piece that can run independently, right? So why AI assisted coding? So A, speed, right? You can write skeleton code quickly, boilerplate code, scaffolding. You're just trying to figure out, um, like I guess Chandan was again mentioning before this talk, that IDs in the past used to have that, right? You could just have a way to um, like just generate tons and tons of kind of getter setter methods in Java, let's say, right? And that really helped. Honestly, like when I was beginning coding, I used to use that quite a bit. It helped me move fast, right? I don't think it made me lazy. It's just, well, that's one less thing I have to do, right? But now with AI assisted coding, you can write tests. Like tests, I feel are the superpower. So I think you still have to use your imagination and your actual kind of understanding of the software to write proper test cases. But the actual test cases, the AI can generate. You can give it like an example of this is what I want to test, and it can do the positive, negative, all kinds of tests, acceptance tests, everything, right? And tests are important because once you have the test, you can write the code and you can always verify whether the tests work or not, right? So I think that is why it gives you speed. You can focus on the most important parts, and then you can explore ideas, make prototypes, move quickly. You don't have to wait for like months. Like let's say you have a new idea, and this has changed my. Again, I've been running software engineering teams for a while, over a decade now. And before, when I used to make a decision about, hey, should we investigate or should we spend time on this spike investigating this new feature, I would be hesitant. I'd be like, okay, I'm going to burn 5 people's time for a month. Is it worthwhile? But now I'm like, okay, I'm going to burn one person's time for a day. Like most times I'm doing it. A lot of these, I love it because I love to prototype. I'm not really a good developer. I'm more of a prototyper. I think I like to tinker and get something, a proof of concept going. And then I can give it to my team and say, look, it works. It works end to end. Take this and go and develop the whole product yourself, right? So it gives people like me a chance to explore. Okay, so the two tools I'm going to talk about is Cursor and Claude, like I mentioned, right? So Cursor is like a VS Code fork, right? I'll give you the rundown of how it works, but essentially you just type Command K in the editor or Control K on Windows, and it's going to give you the chat interface, right? And I'll explain some other stuff. Claude is a bit different because Claude works on the terminal, Claude Code, right? This is not Claude the LLM, it's Claude Code, the software tool that Anthropic has released, right? And it's a little different. It's a terminal native agent. Although what I've done is, for me, the way I use Claude is I actually integrate that into my cursor. So also I'll show you how I do that. It was built on Sonnet 3.5, if you can believe it or not, but of course now they probably use 4.5 or even some internal model that we haven't seen before. Again, like I said, cursor basics pretty easy. You press Command K or Control K. You can go into agent mode, which lets cursor handle stuff independently. You can do multiple requests at the same time. You can say agent one, do kind of, I don't know, fix the UI, agent two, fix the backend, agent three, kind of fix some issue with the database, and it'll do all three, right? And all independently. You need to also understand some other stuff, like, for example, if you want to attach context explicitly, you can do add files, add folders to bring that in. This context is the most important thing. This is what you guys need to understand to write good software, is what context to include when. You cannot include the whole code base all the time. So what do you do? We'll figure that out. Okay, Claude Code, like I said, same thing. It's CLI first, right? The advantage of Claude Code is it's got a long context window. Now, the one difference I didn't mention is Cursor is not really Claude. Claude only has one model. Well, I guess it's got multiple models, but all models are only Anthropic based. Cursor, on the other hand, it can use the Anthropic models, but it can also use the ChatGPT models, like the OpenAI models. It can use the Gemini models. Yeah, it's pretty good. So that's the basic difference. But again, both of them have agent mode. Claude introduced a few really good things, which now like Cursor's copies. It's always a cat and mouse game. Like you'll see next week something else new come in. That's not the important thing. The important thing is to understand these basics and then just execute. Okay, agent mode, we just want to talk about that a little bit, but essentially it allows you to autonomously like plan multi-step workflows. The main thing here is you need to give proper direction and then see what happens, right? And then you can start multiple agents. The other thing I would say is it's still important for us to follow how the LLM is thinking. I think it's very important. A lot of times we kind of get lazy because we give it a prompt and we're like going and making coffee and stuff, which is fine sometimes. But even when I'm doing that, I always come back and look at how it made the decision, what it thought about, because that's where I sometimes see bugs. Maybe some of the assumptions the LLM made are wrong. And I would say anytime you're working with LLMs, do not gloss over the thinking mode. Look at what it's reading, try to understand it, and if you disagree with its logic, like imagine that the LLMs are like junior software engineers and you're the senior guy. You have to be there to hold its hand. You cannot trust it to like write everything. That's the important part here, right? And agent mode is the same thing. You need to make sure um, you let it go, but at the end you figure out what it did, right? So okay, prompt patterns, like be very specific. Use context. So be very specific in the sense of you should, like for example, like add a validate email function that returns true if valid is not really specific, right? It's the opposite of that. You should kind of add more context. Maybe in this case it's okay because you're just validating email, but you should also say like how do you want to validate? Do you want to kind of support domains? Which domains you don't want to support? The prompts work, the code works, the more specific you are. The more general instructions you give it, the worse the LLM is, right? And you guys, again, probably know it, but it's good to repeat that. Use context, use the proper context, use the README. There are a lot of other ways to do it. I'm going to show you them and iterate. I think the best thing for prompts are don't try to do everything in one prompt. That's very important. Like I'm going to give you an example now of a tool we're going to build, hopefully, if you have a little bit of time. Just make sure not to give the LLM one giant prompt and say, do it for me. That's a very wrong way of vibe coding. Break it down into small steps and iterate. Think of it as like agile, like a super speed agile kind of sprint. Each sprint is, let's say, 30 minutes, where you kind of work on one feature for 30 minutes, finish it, then go to the next one. I've done so many of these that I've just got practice with this now. So I can probably do like 10, 20 features in a day, but that's the way to do it. You have to commit and probably use the Git uh, feature rather than trust the LLM to save. I mean, now all of them save their checkpoints, but I would say like iterate slowly over it. So when you make a mistake, which you're definitely going to make a mistake, you can go back to revert back to a previous code that was working, right? Okay. This one I'll probably skip because I don't have a lot of time and I want to give a little bit of um, time for you to see how I do this stuff. So again, like Claude Code, I'm going to show Codex as well, and I'm going to show Gemini. The advantage of Gemini, by the way, is it's got a huge context window. So sometimes I use that as well. Unfortunately, that means I have to pay for all of these, but it does kind of uh, like they all have their benefits basically. And Codex, by the way, it's really good. Codex, I would say, when I'm stuck with Claude, I go to Codex. So Codex is a little slower, and I'll show you that. But I feel like right now the new Codex models are like right up there, probably the best I would recommend. They're really smart. I'll skip over the Codex CLI right now. MCP, I just want to touch on it. I'm going to show you a little bit today, but essentially you need to understand what an MCP is. Very simply, MCPs are just APIs that that an LLM understands. Because an LLM can make an API call, but the MCP is like um, it is an so what it stands for is model context um, protocol, and then it basically allows the LLM to understand what another system is saying. So let's say if two LLMs want to talk, or let's say you can make an MCP server on your own, by the way. You can take your open API APIs and then just convert them and make them into a MCP server, and you can serve it. And then what happens is LLMs can connect to it, and they are more tightly controlled. They can obviously make curl requests to API and get responses that way, but that way they hallucinate more. This way they hallucinate less, and it's basically a LLM first kind of protocol, right? So understand what they are. You don't need to build MCPs yourself, but I would say if you can, use a few MCPs. I'll show you one in the demo that we do. Context 7 is the one I'm going to show. I'm going to skip over the others, but there are a lot of these MCPs, right? And then there's ways to add them. Again, like I'm not going to go over this in detail, but I kept this if anyone is interested and they want to do these advanced things, or maybe you can have another session on MCPs because it's very interesting, by the way. So my company Elastio, we offer an MCP server as well, and it's very powerful. And the interesting part about that is, yes, our customers use the MCP server. We as developers, I use my MCP server every day. And the way I use it is, let's say something isn't working, there's a bug, I will go and use Cursor, let's say, and connect it to my MCP server and say, okay, this was an issue. Here's my MCP server. Check why this didn't work. And it's going to it's going to make calls, get the responses, be like, okay, this API is responding weirdly. Maybe we need to fix it, looks at the code. It's much better, right? It does everything on its own and gives me the response. It can even read, like you can even give it a Jira or a GitHub MCP. It's gonna pull the Jira ticket down, understand what the context is, look at my MCP server to figure out why the code is broken, and then actually fix the code. Like it's really automated. Gets to a point where if you have all the right tools, you just give it some little direction, it's gonna follow the rest. So, and the upside, like what is the upside of this? Basically, it's near instant prototyping. That's exactly what I was saying. We are democratizing building. So the intent is more important than the syntax. I always felt this, even though I've been a developer through and through. I've been a manager for the last 10 years, but I'd say like essentially I've been writing code. My philosophy has always been the intent of what we're trying to do and the software product we're trying to build trumps the code practices all the time. They're important. Architecture is important, but it doesn't trump the reason why we write code, right? And focus on architecture and problem section, like selection, like those are things that we really focus more on, which is the right thing to do, right? The downside, I mean, yeah, it's AI slop, right? That is the downside, and I won't go into this, but I've seen some really poorly crafted AI code, and in fact, I'm really scared anytime I use anything open source now. I'm scared um, whether it's AI or not. By the way, one interesting trick about AI is if you see a page or a website with a lot of purple, you know that um, website's being kind of created with AI 99% of the times. And I'm admitting that by the fact that all my websites are purple and I've created them with AI. So I admit that, hey, it's AI. But I'm just saying, if you see purple on a website, you know it's kind of AI at this point. Okay. Yeah, I'll skip over this for now, just for the time. The developer is the conductor still, right? You, the developer, are controlling everything. So remember, you're not going to be obsolete. You're going to be elevated. Jobs aren't going to go away. Jobs are going to be changed. And maybe if you just don't use AI, maybe then your job's going to go away. But I feel in general, new jobs are going to be created. So just, I mean, you guys are all here, so you want to be in the forefront of how to use this. I'm going to skip this because I did cover it, test first philosophy, but I wanted to do this. This is a practical example. I won't go into this. I'll actually give you a full thing end to end right now. So I think we're at 6:35. So I want to skip all of this because it's not that important. Um, this is the one thing I want to kind of get into is deployment best practices, and you'll see it in the way I write my prompts as well. So the thing I'm going to switch to now is prompting, and I'm going to show you how to write the prompts and how to actually get an application running. Um, and testing. I gave a playwright example, common pitfalls. I'll go into demo. So as I do a demo, I know people may have questions, and I'm going to come to them. Um, First question, Chandan or other people, can you see my full screen? Because I want to share other stuff now.
I see your full screen. Yes.
Okay, good. So I'm going to go into uh, prompts now. So I'm going to show you. I'm going to create, and
Do
by the
see
way,
full screen.
okay, good. Thank you. So I am, and this is interesting. So I had an idea. Well, I didn't even have the idea. I kind of asked AI to generate a bunch of ideas. I chose one that I liked. And then I went to AI again. This is Claude, by the way. And I went to the LLM again and said, okay, now this is my prompt. Write me proper prompts. So everything I'm doing from the AI, we'll tweak it a bit, but I'll give you the idea of how it works. So I'm going to create this app called Sprint Sparks. Okay. And this is a production grade project management app. Okay. We have 20 minutes. I'll see how far I get. Okay. So let's go into my IDE. Actually, let's go to my terminal and let's go to my like a directory. So I'm going to my play directory. Let's clear this out. Okay. So now it's cleared. I'm in this. Oh, sorry. I make a mistake. Yes. mkdir. Why is this not working? Oh, I see. I see. I'm trying to. Let's see. I'm missing this. Sorry. Sprint Spark. Okay, and if I go into Sprint Spark, and then so I'm here, right? This is where I am. Now I'm going to open Cursor, first of all. Okay, it's an empty project. Uh, Obviously, there's nothing in there right now. The first thing I'm going to do is I've asked um, Claude to generate two files. One is the files with all the prompts. We'll get to the prompts soon. Before that, I want to basically generate like a claude.md file. So I'll show you what that means. But essentially, I create a file called claude.md. Okay. And I'm going to paste this whole thing here. Take a look at this. I'm going to cover this while Claude thinks, and I'm going to come to this. But first, let's start. So this is cursor, by the way. I can continue with cursor. So if I had to do anything right now, I'd press Command L like I showed you. And this gives me this window with a new chat where I can put my prompts in, right? And I can choose the agent. I keep it auto to save on cost, but sometimes I don't, and I can um, choose the model, right? But I'm not going to use Claude because Claude I probably got a sorry, Cursor I probably got a Claude anyway. So instead of going through Cursor, I'm going to go through Claude directly. So the way I get Claude working, like I said, it's a terminal application, but I've got a plugin for Claude inside Cursor. So I click on that, and this is the new Claude that's come up. Hopefully it's logged in. So the first thing I'm going to do is take this other prompt here, right? And I'm going to say, I'm going to change it a bit actually. Uh, let's change it a bit. So let's open Cursor. Hopefully you guys can see everything. I'll make it a little, I'm trying to make sure you guys can visualize, but let's
Yeah,
see.
yeah,
So
I can
let's,
see.
okay,
I
good.
think, yeah.
Okay, so first thing is I'm going to delete this.
Yes, we
I'm
can
going
see.
to, okay, good. Thank you. So I'm going to use Go 1.25 because I think that's the latest one. That's also what I've got installed. I'm going to use SQLite. I'm going to use Chi Router. I'm going to use JWT auth. If people don't know what that is, we don't have time for this, but hopefully the main thing I'm trying to say is you need to know what you're kind of doing right now, right? And all these tools, otherwise your prompts are not going to work. But I'm very specific. I say this is the back end I want, this is the front end I want, this is testing, this is infrastructure, right? And then I'm gonna delete this and add prompt one directly. So this is my full prompt. Okay. So while this loads, because it's going to take a bunch of time, and you know what? I'm going to go into plan mode, which uh, why is it not going into plan mode? Oh, it is in plan mode. Okay, I'll explain what plan mode is because I didn't mention it. But in plan mode, I've configured the cloud model to go into Opus, which is a very expensive model. You have to, I think, be on the $200 plan to get it. But it's much better. It thinks deeper. So let me press enter. And while it's waiting, now we can answer some questions and it'll do a bunch of stuff. Um, anyway, yes. And it's going to ask me a bunch of prompts. I'm going to say, yes, I have Go version. I have this. You can check all that. So we'll go into, I have to keep going back to this because it's checking Docker and stuff. Hopefully I've got Docker installed. Yes, I've got Docker running. It's good. Okay. Now, what's important is, by the way, for Cursor, there are Cursor rules. Since we're kind of focusing on Claude right now, um, I generally create a claude.md file, right? And let me delete some of this because remember, the more you add here, the more context is going to be sent each time. So you have to Oh, see, and Claude actually said, good, good. Only Claude MD exists right now, so I have all the information. Yes, and auto accept because I don't want to. Again, so I'm fully embracing the vibe coding now by saying I usually wouldn't do this. I would actually say, but see, it's created a step by step of doing everything. And it has everything right now. See, look, this is the name of the project, Sprint Sparks. It's a lightweight project management app. I'm using Go, SQLite, React, TypeScript. Yeah, every commit deployable to production. I've given, and these are things, by the way. So you saw that I generated all this from Claude itself, right? So I gave it a big prompt and said, this is what I wanted. And it took that whole thing in English blob and then created these separate things. So you can use it for that as well. Before you code, I always try to give like these things, like this whole summarize, think, um, outline, and predict, right? And then I explain how the Go backend's going to look. I explain what never to do, never write raw SQL queries, never panic, never log password tokens. These seem very obvious, but you have to understand the level of detail you need to go to get to a production level app. You need this kind of detail. Do not skip these in the sense and assume things to work. They will not work. This thing is going on. I know I'm not paying much attention to it, but see, it's creating GitHub workflows and other things. Um, and again, for the React, again, the same thing. I tell it the do's, I tell it the don'ts, right? Um, and it's critical, by the way. And then I make sure the security features, it must validate inputs, all the general stuff. Like now, look, if you're like whatever, even a junior developer, you pretty much know that these things have to happen. But the main thing is if you don't tell the LLM that, it forgets. And even after you tell it that, it may still forget. So it's your goal is to go and check. You shouldn't deploy anything to production without checking the piece of code that you're putting out. So your goal right now is becoming a code reviewer and becoming a kind of, I guess, a QA automated, like a QA manual tester, maybe even, right? Because the automated tests are running, but you need to now check the automated test to make sure they are actually written properly, and then you need to check um, kind of the actual code to make sure that it works. So code reviews become super critical here. I've also kind of outlined the API contract that I want. I want to make all these creating a project, listing a project. Seems very simple, by the way, but if you can imagine, I'm doing this demo live. By the way, I've never done it. All I did was an hour before or a few hours before I asked kind of Anthropic to create the prompts for me. And like as you can see the time crunch, there are 15 minutes remaining. There are 18 prompts, by the way. So we're not going to finish for sure. But you can see my goal is to get you something running locally by the time we finish this. So we'll see how that works. But the main thing I'm trying to, I guess, impress upon you guys is the amount of detail. This detail is important. If you skip this detail, your software is not going to be very good. Okay, I'll pause. And Chandan, if you want to ask me some questions, I think I'm good because there's still some time left for this guy.
No, I think most of the question what I see from they are asking different most I would say uh, I think when it comes to AI, a lot of people confuse AI with LLM, AI with MCP, vibe coding with MCP. So I think someone was interested, some question related to MCP specific. So I told
Mhm.
them we might hold a different session
Yeah, yeah,
later on
makes
for
sense because
MCP.
there's too many things to cover. You're right. But the main thing is you're right. People get confused. And I think it's important to know the distinction. What is an AI? What is an LLM? LLM and AIs, they become synonymous. They're not, right? And uh, LLM is only a small part of what a full AI research space is. It's vast, right? So, and then of course MCPs are there, and there's so many other things. So we'll get into them as we can. But right now the goal is, anyways,
Um,
it's looking pretty good.
So we have
quick
second one is
question.
Abdul Karim.
Yes. One of the biggest issues is as a developer of 20 plus years, why don't we
Yep.
write this stuff to a database? Why don't we have buffers to write this stuff to? Why aren't we writing it like we do with IDEs and we code in the browser with a lot of stuff we did with the Google developer groups where we're writing 3GS, 3GS things for three-dimensional images? Like, why can't we save these tokens to a buffer and then save the history and tune it with better context, like we did with web terms for Web 2.0? Like, we've solved some of these problems if we
That's a great
use it.
question.
Yeah, I mean, like I put a link in about token memory, or specifically AI code memory in the chat. And like there are even audit tools like Audit LLM and LLM Audit that people have done research about, but we need a good like open source tool like we did with React and we did with Dart to write a memory isolate that
Yeah.
just takes and saves your copy paste maybe from the copy thing in the
Okay,
actual
got
prompt.
it. So Abdul, do you have any question specific to this topic?
Yes. Are there any tools that let you save and write like you would to any web app or even a browser plugin or a prompt plugin? Write this stuff to an actual buffer or memory, someplace in memory. You can easily save it and write and customize it for better context because that's what's missing.
That's
Like,
a
are
great
there any
question.
tools you people are using? Like, is the
So,
MPC server have those type of things where you can write it to a database or just to the copy paste even yeah.
so I mean, good question. And I've been like, this is the first things that I kind of had to tackle. The way I've solved it is I don't want to put it in a database. Like my database is for my customers and their data. What I'm doing is in my code, I have a folder called features. And each time I work on a new feature or work on a new bug, I solve it with AI, and then I put the context in the MD file, a markdown file. And later on, let's say 6 months from now, let's say I go back to that bug. I'm like, okay, what did I do there? I start with the context there and then I move on, right? So everything is documented It's put in my Confluence, it's put in my code base, it's all there. And I asked the LLM to do it. I have to make some tweaks because it kind of adds a lot of jargon, but that's exactly what I'm doing. I don't need a database because I have my file system, right? Which has all the context. I keep the context there. Yeah.
Right, for you personally, but what if you're building a web scale app where a lot of people have to solve and iterate on technology? Say you're writing better better context for search terms and better
Well,
ability to find actually what you want. And in
so
order to
we're
be able to iterate it with web development, collaborative web development, you need to be able to let other people access that. That's why you put it as a web app accessible with a database and a web server.
that would be good. But the thing is, like, we're
Yeah.
a team of 50 developers that are using Git as our tool where I work on something, I push it to Git, someone else pulls it, they have the context, they can continue from that point. But you're right, if you're doing it at a larger scale, you just make a web app, you make a database. No one's done it before because the thing is the context is all individual. It's not like it's hard to use context from my experience. Like your context and your
Mhm.
problem that you've done is not easily portable to everyone else. That is my experience, which is
It
why in a
is.
team it
And,
works.
and this is the point. This is what we've done with context terms in Web 2. We have for search and for social networks, we had to find what people meant by certain terms. So this has kind of been solved at scale with social networks on Facebook's platform and on Google, but it's just that people who are Git developers, and I'm a web scale web developer who we work on stuff that millions of people use. So, and you want to build even like open source stuff, like even like that a lot of people use, like for the Internet Archive. The key is there are actually open source projects that let you do this already with context, because that's the one thing AI prompts do. They suck at contextual terms. I'm an old natural language processing guy, Neo4j guy. I actually understand how to get better contextual terms, and there's
Okay,
no
yeah.
open
So
source tool that does that.
Abdul, I understand. So I think we need to go to the next question. If you're so Splocks, what is the next question? And please keep the question very specific question.
I
Uh,
just have a small question, if I can.
yeah, yeah, sure.
Yeah, so I wanted to understand regarding the Claude MD file. So, are like whenever we are giving the prompts, is the Claude MD file always giving as a context, as a whole
Yes,
file as a context for every prompt?
that's right. That is correct. Which is why you have to be careful and make it small. Every time you have a prompt, well, in the same session though, so it's already in memory now, right? So in this session, now if you started a new session, you'd give it again, but in this session, it already has it in context. That's right. Not for each message that you're sending, but for each session, you do it
Okay,
once.
so I mean, well, so like in this example, for example, we are at the start we are going to create a boilerplate, then this prompt will work best. But like later on, if you want to add the feature, then probably we need to like minimize these
Correct,
MDs,
correct,
right? Yeah,
correct,
okay.
correct,
Makes
correct.
sense.
It always is not constant, by the way. In my experience, your Claude MD file changes and shifts.
Yes.
It not. I mean, incredible changes, but like just yeah, you need to compress it, like because yeah, every token matters. You're paying for it, right?
100, but
So
I think I didn't know about using this Claude MD file. This
the
will be
most powerful
helpful
one,
because like sometimes in the code they like the AI generated code add lots of comments like which
100%.
clearly like doesn't seems appropriate. So we can add the instruction that should be like followed in all the code.
Then it may disobey, by the way. Like you may say something, it'll still go and do it. Then you have to remind it, by the way, look at Cloud MD. I've done that multiple times. It's getting better, but there's still hallucinations, right? But Claude in my mind is the best at this point. Even after all the complaints in the last few months, all their pricing issues, everything, it's still doing the best for me. You can see the speed, by the way. If I did this demo with Codex, it would take a long time. So this is the most interesting and important part of Claude. In Cursor, it's called Cursor rules. Codex has its own thing. Gemini has its own thing. Every you have to understand for each one how it works. But this is the most critical thing. Once you understand this and the prompts, your code will become much better. So yeah.
Okay, thanks. Next question, Pierre.
Yeah, actually, it was a question about the MD file too. So you mentioned that it taking a bit of your context every time, and so I'm going with the MCP. Is the MCP also taking a bit of context, or is it something that will be used in addition?
It's a great question. The MCP will actually be used when needed. So I'll show you the MCP while we're talking. I've already given it the third prompt, by the way. I just want before I just begin your question, let me just go back to everyone to say so. The first prompt that I did has already got me a React page with a Go backend, but of course, as you can see, it's empty. I need to get to at least prompt number 10 to give you some sort of a live app. But just letting you know, I'm in prompt 3 right now. It's doing its work. It's beautiful. Let's go back to your question. So MCP. So let's go to MCP. It's slash MCP. By the way, you have to know a lot of these slash commands, and I'd say slash MCP is a good command. You can add new MCPs like this, but I would also say the other most important slash command is compact, and this is what you need to do to actually compact the history. Once it gets to 0, by the way, compact happens automatically. Why is you can also see the tokens and stuff and how much stuff has happened. Yes, and don't reply. But let's go back to MCP. So when I say MCP, I'm only using contact 7 right now. Okay, it's connected. So what happens is any documentation that it needs. Contact 7, by the way, gives all the documentation. If it needs any help and Claude isn't sure how to write something, it'll always go to Contact 7 and ask the question. It decides when to go, right? So when you, let's say, I have my Elastio MCP, I ask Elastio a specific question, it'll know to use that MCP. I don't have to tell it. I mean, I can even tell it to use it, but that's just wasting tokens. It knows what decisions to make. It doesn't go to the MCP all the time. It only goes when it needs to. It makes that decision on its own. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, okay. So it doesn't take, it's a decision from the AI agent and not something that hit
No,
your context windows. Thank you.
no, no. So it's still going. We're almost done on um, prompt 4. Let's go. Oh, well, we're almost done with prompt 3. I want to get to at least prompt 5 so I can show you some APIs working as well. And then we'll go to backend. I mean, this is all testing. Maybe I mean, I don't want to skip the testing. We're almost at time, Chandan. So I'm still kind of running through it, but I do want to give people an idea. And you can see the amount of, again, you may think, okay, this is kind of like useless, like we're just kind of going through it. But honestly, um, it takes 30 minutes to honestly make this whole thing work. And again, I haven't done it, but I've done so many of these that I know how long it takes, essentially. Um, and it's going to work. It's going to be a Docker container. The front end, back end is going to be Dockerized. If you want to use Docker Compose, that'll happen. If you actually wanted to deploy it to a web app, that happens as well. And while this is happening, I can actually show you like my own website, right? So this is my website again, vibe coded, like I said, again, purple, right? Yeah, this is one of my websites. This is my other website, also purple, to just tell people, look, it's been vibe coded. But look at the amount of like, and again, I probably have spent like maybe 20 hours on this, but look, I've got a blog. I can write whatever I want with the blog. Again, it's not great, but I can add pictures. I can edit the blog, right? And I can say whatever I want. The other interesting part is all the slides that you saw today were also from were vibe coded, and it's a slide framework that I made. So when I do this, you see my slides, right? And I go full screen, you see it. I don't use PowerPoint, just host it on my domain. This not secure. I don't know, something broken on this Chrome thing. I did fix the SSL issues, but this instance of Chrome has some cookie issues. Anyway, so yeah, it's super powerful. I've got admin access. I've got API access actually, because I like making. I see there's like 4 APIs right now, but I like making. I've got an API token. You can manage the tokens. You can, yeah. And by the way, this API token is how my other website actually has the API token, and then it actually pulls those posts from the other website. These are two separate websites. All this is being byte coded. Again, I understand these are simple. I know a lot of people will ask me, okay, but how do you make a production level uh, application? And that's possible as well. I do that as my full-time job. So it's just the main thing to think about is what kind of prompts you're kind of giving it. And the better the prompts are, the better the output's going to be. Essentially, that's what it is. Always look at the Claude MD files. And the other thing I just wanted to show is there's Codex on the other side as well. Let me see if I can pull that up. See, Codex is pinning up right now. Codex is really good, by the way. You guys should try it as well. Of course, all of these are paid. Like, I don't think you can use any of this for free. But honestly, like if you can leverage it, it'll pay you back much more. Um, See, it's already kind of making the APIs at this point right now. I don't know which. Uh, okay. Yes. Oh, so it's now doing the curl test. Nice. So you can sign up. Uh, all right. So we're at 7. I don't know, Chandan. Um, I don't know how much
Yeah,
more
I think we
we
are
have.
almost done. So usually I try to keep it tight, like so that we conclude by 7 o'clock. So by the way, thank you everybody for the thing. So another thing I would say, if anybody wants to collaborate, so there in the meetup itself there is a group. I pasted a link about that. That is a basically your meetup also has a discussion group. So I would say feel free to ask question over there. There is a discussion button, and we can collaborate over there. And otherwise, please sign up, follow our LinkedIn page. And one more thing, on 4th November, we have a really big event, which is a Toronto AI panel discussion for future of Canada's AI strategy. So this is in downtown Toronto, and this is only through registration. So anybody has signed up on Meetup, you should see a link to Luma, and you have to sign up over there, and only approved people will be able to enter, because that is a pretty much gets full pretty quickly. So if you go to Meetup, I see a lot of people have signed up, put on the wait list. It will not work. You have to go to the Luma link. I'm pasting the Luma link here so that you are able to directly go and make sure. And this is an in-person event. So if you are not from Toronto, please don't, no point signing up here. So this is usually big event. So we are getting uh, director of AI from Royal Bank of Canada, director of AI from Loblaws, and also CTO and co-founder of a AI startup company, a data center company. And also we have a special guest. He actually very comes very often into television, in local Canadian television. So he's pretty much, if anybody watches CTV or CBC News, you see him all the time. He's on the television as an AI expert. So he will be moderating the event, and we will be discussing various AI strategy questions. It's great for networking, especially if you are a startup or you are a developer. So, okay, first of all, and Anshuman, thank you so much for coming and sharing your knowledge. And I think everybody is enriched, including me, by the way. By the way, I did not know about this cloud.md thing. So I will give it a shot, and I hope I'll be a better developer next time. Thank you so much. And by the way, whoever has registered, you will be getting an email with the slide, with the video recording and everything. Okay, thank you
I'm
so
sorry.
much.
Can I ask how can we connect? You have
Yeah, he
email
will.
or
I will
something?
send you. And who, if you have signed up using the registration link, you will get an email with all the information
And
about with his website and everything. So you can reach out to him if you want to connect with him. Okay.
and you will be on the event as well?
Yeah, I'm hosting the event, so I'll be in the
Uh-huh.
event.
Uh-huh. Okay. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you
you
so
so much.
much. Have a good
Thanks a
day.
lot.
Bye.
Bye.